I don't think I was prepared for what I was getting into when I started the Outer Wilds. I clocked 21 hours with this game over roughly 6 days. The first 18 and a half hours were spent playing through the game, and the remaining 2.5 were for earning trophies on my way to the Platinum. I have a separate video on how I obtain all the trophies, so if you are interested in seeing that, I'll include a link to the video in the description below. The Outer Wilds has been in my backlog for quite some time, but I decided to fire it up as I was heading into a long weekend. This game consumed me. I could not stop thinking about it between sessions and was even waking up in the middle of the night with something just clicking for me in that moment. I am glad I knew very little about this game going into it, as I believe playing this blind is the only way to truly experience it. The only thing I recall hearing about it is that it could technically be beaten in about 20 minutes if you knew what to do. But I quickly learned that getting to the end wasn't my goal. Learning how to get there is ultimately what this game is about. I believe the best way to talk about Outer Wilds is to show you my own journey. This game gives you every tool you need to be successful right at the beginning except one: knowledge. What I learned and the order in which I learned it shaped my entire experience. I would love to hear how my playthrough compares to your own, so please share your stories in the comments below. With all that being said, let's start at the most appropriate place: the beginning. After waking up to a view of the night sky, I look around and talk with Slate, sitting by the campfire and getting my first sense of direction. I find out that today is launch day and I'll be doing my first solo voyage. He directs me to the observatory to get the launch codes from Hornfels, but not before I roast and eat a marshmallow. On my way to the observatory, I make sure to talk with the locals who offer some tutorials. I learn to fly a model ship and, oops, ignore that, practice landing it on one of the geysers ahead of me. I find a couple of kids who convince me to play a game of hide and seek where I learn how to use my signal scope to hone in on specific frequencies. I talk with Moraine, who tells me about the Outer Wilds Ventures frequency, where I can pick up other travelers' music on distant planets. I make a pit stop in the Zero-G cave to give Gaussen a hand with repairing a satellite. After some time getting used to my suit's flight controls in zero gravity, I repaired all 3 parts. I finally make my way to the observatory and check out all the exhibits, which includes this creepy statue, a rock that moves anytime I'm not looking at it, and a map of the solar system. I talk with Hornfels and obtain my launch codes. On my way out, the creepy statue turns to me, opens its eyes, and I see a flashback sequence of everything I've done up until this point. I stood there stunned for a moment, not quite sure what to make of what just happened. I head up to my ship for the first time and get in, getting familiar with my surroundings. I check out the ship log, which is largely empty now but will get filled out over time. I suit up and head to my captain's chair to start this adventure. Not entirely sure where to go first, I see the local moon, the Attlerock, and target it as my first destination. There is a campfire burning, so I land in a nearby crater to disembark and check it out. I chat with Esker and learn a bit about this lunar outpost. He tells me to check out the North Pole as I'll get great reception with my signal scope to hear the instruments of other travelers. I take his advice and read a log posted there which mentions the other travelers and their instruments, and then something strange. The sound of Feldspar's harmonica can be heard coming from our home planet Timberhearth. But Feldspar disappeared in space ages ago. I use my signal scope and confirm what he hears and also notice a plume of smoke coming from that area. Before leaving this rock, I decide to explore a little and find some ruins on the South Pole. I push this glass ball around, causing the walls around me to shift. I head down some stairs and translate a message on the wall that explains the contraption I found on the surface is the eye signal locator, which means nothing to me at this time. I jump back into my ship and use my signalscope to find my next destination back on Timberhearth by locating where the harmonica music is coming from. After landing almost right on top of Tektite, I talk with him and he tells me about the bramble seed that has crashed on this planet. I move my ship to give us some more space and come back down to launch a scout probe per his recommendation, when all of a sudden there is a bright flash before my screen goes dark and I see a slideshow of everything I just did. I wake up back where I started. I was a little disoriented, so I talk to Slate and ask him the same question I'm thinking. Did I just die? I get my bearings straight and I notice I still have my launch codes, so I head directly back to my ship and check my log. I see an entry for the dark bramble seed with a marker saying there's more to explore here, so I make that my first order of business. This time I'm able to send a scout into the seed and take some pictures. I'm surprised to see what looks like an anglerfish skeleton and some trees. Pulling out my signal scope again, I confirm this is where the harmonica sound is coming from. Satisfied with this new information, I check my ship log again and see it has cleared the marker for this location. I look at the planetary map and see a planet named Brittle Hollow is close, so I go there next. On my approach, I see a blue spotlight and I land nearby to check it out. I find a recording to learn that this is an escape pod. I go inside and pop open an escape hatch and peer down into the center of this planet, which appears to be a black hole. I accidentally step over the threshold and manage to save myself with my boosters and land on a makeshift platform. A message on the wall confirms my observation and I continue to head down to find what looks like an underground city. I translate any message I come across and learn about a vessel and the goal of reaching the eye of the universe. I also find a mural on the wall that appears to tell the story of the eye sending a signal out to the vessel being attacked, and finally 3 escape pods and what planets they landed on. I find gravity crystals along a wall and follow them to see where they lead. I come across a large gap in the rock with more gravity crystals on the other side. Forgetting that I'm walking on the ceiling at this point, I try to jump the gap, only to have the gravity crystals lose its effect on me, and I panic as I get pulled towards the black hole core of Brittle Hollow. While I expected to die, I find myself floating in space with Brittle Hollow in the distance, along with a marker for my ship showing I'm a long way from where I just was. Straight ahead appears to be something that is more than just debris, and I check it out. I learned this is White Hole Station, which the author of this note reassures me that I'm not the first person to have fallen through the black hole, and that this station can warp me back to Brittle Hollow. I go below deck and find an orb I can move around in the floor and place it in one of the openings. The station appears to be moving to align itself with my target. I pick up a projection stone I found and wait in the middle of the room. I look up to enjoy the view as the station adjusts itself, and right as Brittle Hollow centers into view, I'm warped to a new location. I'm in the middle of reading the message from my companion projection stone when I'm rudely hit with another rush of white light as I die again. I check my updated ship log and see I've uncovered a lot of new information, and that there is more to explore in the place I was just at. I go right back to Brittle Hollow and recognize the area I had just died at, so I land there to pick up where I left off and learn a little bit more about the phantom moon that sometimes orbits this planet. I check back in on my ship log and see the entry for White Hole Station. I decide I want to go back there to continue my search for clues. The quickest way I know how to do that is using the black hole, so I fly my ship into it. I grab the projection stone and warp back to Brittle Hollow to finish reading the message within to learn about the high energy lab on the Ember Twin planet. I see the warp pad is glowing, so I jump in it to get transported back to the Whitehole station and retrieve my ship. I see what appears to be a comet nearby. I lock onto what appears to be called the Interloper and try to find a decent spot to land. I notice something appears to be frozen on its backside, so I check it out. I find a recording nearby where it's mentioned that the shuttle was frozen in the ice from being on the dark side of the comet. As I explore the area, I notice my ship starts to go up in flames. I get in to try and quickly take off from the comet when I'm hit with another white flash and I'm back at Timber Hearth, waking up by the campfire. This time I take off in my ship and head to a new planet, the Ember Twin. I see another ship on the surface and park myself nearby. Not quite sure where to go, I fall into a canyon area and find an entrance into a cave. I go to the bottom to read a message. When I'm done, I turn to leave and find a giant black rock that wasn't there before. I end up jumping on top of it and turning my flashlight on then off and see a plant appear that wasn't there before. I do it again and the plant is gone. I look around and notice the cave has changed too. I get off this rock and find another message of someone who experienced the same thing. This rock disappears if you aren't looking at it, just like the one back at Timber Hearth in the observatory. Little did I know at the time I had just learned about a very important quantum rule I would need to complete this journey later. I exit the cave in a different location on the planet than I had entered it and see smoke coming from a camp above me. I find Chert there, another member of the expedition of travelers. I eat a marshmallow and check out a landmark I see in the distance. I find a door to the high energy lab that appears to be broken, but a note saying it can be accessed from the Sunless City below. I follow the stairs down a path, but I am blocked from what appears to be the Sunless City entrance by ghost matter. It looks like the planet is filling up with sand, so I'm unable to go further down to see if there is another way in. I continue to explore the planet and find something poking out of the sand, though I'm not really sure what it's for. I also find a blue light shining into the sky, similar to what I had found on Brittle Hollow, but again, there's too much sand for me to actually do anything in this area. At the South Pole, I find another structure similar to what was on the Addle Rock and find some messages that explain that it is a quantum moon locator. I continue to search the area, but this time I've got a front row seat to see what has actually been going on that causes me to die and begin again. The sun supernovas and destroys the entire galaxy, causing me to start over from the beginning in a time loop. With my next trip, I head directly to the Ember Twin. It was clear that over time, areas became inaccessible due to sand filling in the canyons, so I wanted to explore it early. I go straight for the blue light shining in the sky to explore the escape pod. I exit out the escape hatch at the bottom and follow the signs to the Sunless City. While I wait for the door to open, I headed up a nearby stairwell and send a scout through a hole in a wall to find the skeleton of an anglerfish, but no way to get inside. I go through the door to the Sunless City and find notes about the Sun Station and the Ash Twin project. I raise some orbs up in the pillars and they light up doorways in the area. I spend a long time running around aimlessly, not really finding much. Many messages talk about the eye of the universe, but I don't have much new direction. I find myself trapped in a room as the sand continues to rise. I try to escape, but I eventually meet my demise. Not to be dissuaded, I go right back to work at Ember Twin and head to the Sunless City. I turn on all the lights, then go straight for the bottom. I know that this will quickly become blocked off once the sand rises too high, so I want to see what's down there now. I find a door to the high energy lab. I follow glowing power cables along the floor and eventually make my way into the lab. The notes on the wall talk about the work being done at the Whitehole Station, and I also learn about the Southern Observatory attempting to create a 22-minute long interval between departure and arrival using a warp core. I learned there are towers on the Ash Twin that serve as warp platforms to critical points on each of the other planets, with each tower resembling their target location. I go back outside and notice the unidentified signal nearby message at the top of my screen, which has showed up several times before, but I wasn't really sure what to do about it. I pull out my signal scope and point it at the escape pod beacon and unlock a new frequency for distress beacons. I take a trip to the nearby ash twin planet and see the towers that I read about earlier. While scoping them out, I got a wonderful view of the next supernova. I beeline it right back for the ash twin, overshoot it, and slam into the ember twin, breaking my ship apart. I get out to look at the damage only to find there really isn't much left of my ship. Since I can't get off this planet, I head below to try and do some exploring, only to get lost in the sand-filled caves and get crushed to death. Not my proudest time loop. Rather than go back to the twin planets, I decide instead to head to Giant's Deep for the first time. As I approach, I can't see much, but what appears to be an island comes flying out of nowhere. Not quite sure what to make of that, I head for the landing pad on some debris that is orbiting the planet. I find out more about the Ash Twin project and that this debris is actually an orbital probe cannon that broke apart during its last launch. I board my ship again and head into Giant's Deep below with my sights set on the smoke coming from a nearby campfire. I find Gabriel and learn he's experiencing the same time loop I am. He tells me a bit about the planet and the 4 islands in the sea. I walk around to see what is nearby. During that walk, a cyclone launches the island into the sky, and I figure out pretty quickly this is what I saw on my first approach. After a hard landing, I get back in my ship and find an island with some jellyfish trapped in ice. I don't get far before it goes dark, and I die again. On my next flight out, I see the quantum moon orbiting Timber Hearth, and I decide to first try and land there to see what it's all about. I slowly approach, and instead of hitting solid ground, I go right through it. I look around and it's disappeared. Clearly I did something wrong, but I'm not sure what. Since I'm nearby, I set my sight back on Timber Hearth and land my ship on a bridge. I exit to find mining site 2B and get some more info on the Ash Twin project. I explore a little more back outside and jump down to a lower area, only to find it's covered in ghost matter and I promptly die. I choose to go back to Giant's Deep and land on the first island I see. This is the construction yard where they were monitoring the orbital probe cannon. There was a problem with the power which caused an issue with the launch. Additionally, one of the components fell and was able to sink below the heavy current of Giant's Deep, something I'm not able to figure out how to do myself. I get back on my ship and find another island I have not yet explored. I find some ruins and see an open area below that I can't quite get to. I find a note that says there is a workshop inside the island, so I get an idea. Why don't I try jumping in the water and swimming underneath the island? Lo and behold, it works. I read a little bit about the statues and their installation at the Ash Twin project before I die to the supernova while I'm looking in on another location through a projection stone. I wasn't done at Giant's Deep, so I go back there, but not before I try and land on the quantum moon that has now shown up in its orbit. To no surprise, I fly right through it again. I locate the workshop island again and pick up where I left off. I notice a ledge I can't reach due to the high gravity, but it looks like there is something up there for me. I come up with the idea that I will wait until I hear a cyclone nearby, then I will let it throw me in the air and I will use the 0G of space to help me reach it, and it works. I stand in the blue light to hold me in place until the island drops back down to the planet and I can walk around. There isn't much up here other than some text about sending memories and beings back in time. Satisfied with what I found at Giant's Deep, I take off and decide to go back to Brittle Hollow. On my way there, I take a closer look at its volcano moon, Hollow's Lantern. At first, I don't think there's anything worth seeing, but then I noticed something inside one of the volcanoes. I figure it will be hard to land my ship in there, so I'll instead park my ship just a little ways away and then use my jetpack to carefully land inside. I unfortunately forgot gravity existed for a moment, and instead of skillfully flying into the mouth of the volcano, I immediately got pulled towards the moon and died in the lava. I try again and immediately get blasted by a volcanic rock. Not to be discouraged, I repair my ship and give it another shot. This time, I fly into the volcano, get blinded by an eruption, and fly straight into the lava. This time, I am discouraged, and choose instead to land on Brittle Hollow's south pole to check out the southern observatory I've read so much about. I find the door below broken so I can't enter, but read that there are other paths below. I use my ship to search the area to find one of these paths. I check out the gravity cannon and find a reference to the Tower of Quantum Knowledge, where there's a rule I need to learn. Before I go find this tower, I play around with the controls for the gravity cannon and summon a Nomai ship. I board it and find a recording that the pilot was able to figure out how to land on the Quantum Moon. They also make note that the moon always welcomes its visitors at the South Pole. I exit the ship and follow the signs for the Southern Observatory. On my way there, I find the lost explorer Rybeck for the first time and check in on him. I leave his camp and find a sign for the Tower of Quantum Knowledge and decide to take a detour straight into a black hole. I use the White Hole Station to warp back to Brittle Hollow just in time to die to the supernova. With the whole inside of the planet still to explore, I go back to Brittle Hollow and find a clearing I hadn't noticed that turns out to be the top of the Tower of Quantum Knowledge. I head below and read that if I intend to make the journey to the Quantum Moon, I'll need to obtain the last of the knowledge for the journey in the tower above. The problem is, the way up is broken and I can't fly that high with my jetpack. Rather than waste a bunch of time here, I decide to follow a new path that takes me to the Black Hole Forge, where a new warp core was being developed for the vessel. The ones leaving these messages were considering going into Dark Bramble to recover the warp core of the vessel after it had crashed inside. My favorite discovery I made here is a shortcut to the surface, which I end up using a lot for the remainder of my playthrough. Going back down into the forge, I tried to get cute with my jetpack while I was on a bridge, and I slip and fall off the edge into the black hole below. Rather than access the White Hole Station to warp back to Brittle Hollow, I instead see a nearby comet as an easier way out and throw myself into it, causing me to die and start this loop over. Using the new entrance I learned about, I go straight back to the Black Hole Forge to finish looking around. I run around this area a lot, but the only real takeaway here is that everyone's goal is to find this eye of the universe. I also see there is something on the ceiling, but I can't get there due to the towers being broken. I go back to my ship on the surface just as the music signifying the end of another cycle begins. I decide to take in this supernova with a view. I check out my star map and decide I'll head to Dark Bramble since it is the last planet in this system I have yet to explore. As I approach, I see a light within and am drawn to it. Not sure what to expect, I slowly fly around and check my surroundings. I use my signal scope to try and zero in on Feldspar's harmonica and head in the direction of one of the lights. As I accelerate, a mouthful of teeth comes from my right side and scares the absolute hell out of me, and I get eaten. Rather than put myself through that haunted planet again, I decide to try my hand at landing in the volcano of Hollow's Lantern. This time, I'm able to stick to the sidewalls and force my ship to land. Despite the difficulty getting here, I don't get much new information, just that the mines on Timber Hearth provided ore that can survive the longest in direct heat and will be used to supply the Ash Twin project. I get the idea to fly my ship into the core of Brittle Hollow to try and reach the Southern Observatory from below as I had not yet figured out how to do it on foot. I find the path up, but when I try to land my ship and exit, I fall into the black hole core. Rather than figure out how to retrieve my ship, I take the easy way out by flying face first into the white hole station and dying. I go back and find the actual path that leads to the Southern Observatory and learn one of my favorite discoveries of the game. There are simulations of 2 cyclones that can be found on Giant's Deep, one rotating clockwise and the other counterclockwise. The message on the wall explains that the common clockwise cyclone will launch whatever gets caught in it into the air, but the rarer counterclockwise cyclone will pull things down. I test that theory with my scout launcher by sending a scout into the 2 simulations to see the results. As excited as I am to use my newfound knowledge, I know this time loop is coming to an end. I head out the door to the surface and bounce around until I run out of oxygen to start a new loop. I immediately take off with the goal of testing my new knowledge on Giant's Deep, but I'm distracted by a blinking red light in the distance. I find a satellite and discover a new deep space radio frequency for my signal scope. I now fly to Giant's Deep and check out the cyclones. I quickly spot the one going in a counterclockwise motion and fly into it, getting pushed down below the water's surface and underneath the current. I try to land my ship on the core below, only to be electrocuted and knocked away. I spend a lot of time down here, sending scouts bouncing off the core and the jellyfish with no real idea on what I'm supposed to do. I eventually gave up and went off planet. Checking my ship log, I saw I didn't have much information on the Ash Twin Towers, so I went back to the Ash Twin. I landed just in time to read a little bit about the Sun Station just before the end of this time loop. I spent the next 2 cycles trying to figure out how the Ash Twin worked. I mistakenly parked my ship right on the equator, so it got sucked up and thrown onto Ember Twin. I honestly didn't learn anything new and ended up dying to running out of fuel and oxygen the first time, and then to the supernova on the next. I review my ship log and see there is still more for me to find in the Sunless City, particularly with the anglerfish fossil. I find a message that says I can get to the fossil through the Stepping Stone Cave. They also recommend throwing a light into its mouth first to help show the way. I go back to the Overlook and shoot a scout into the area and use that as a guide to find the entrance from below. I had 2 takeaways from this. First, the scout is a really useful tool to use as a marker if I need to find a different way in somewhere. And second, the anglerfish are blind, something I'll need to remember for my next trip into Dark Bramble. I know this cycle is ending soon, so I go back to Timber Hearth and splash around in the water, finding a series of tunnels. I ride a geyser into the sky right as the sun explodes again. As I take off for my next flight, I notice something flying very fast and close to the sun. I try to get close to it several times, but realize it's impossible to catch up to, so eventually I leave it be as I'm sure there's an easier way to land on it. I decide to go back to Giant's Deep to see if I can figure out what to do. I go down to the core and turn on my signal scope to see if there is anything interesting. My quantum fluctuations frequency shows something nearby. I begin to realize that it isn't coming from the core of the planet, but above the water. I surface to find an island that I had not yet come across in my travels to this planet. This tower had been hidden inside the giant cyclone on the north pole of this planet. I just hadn't known it was there until I saw it from below. I find a sign that says this tower contains the knowledge needed to make your first quantum journey. How convenient, because that's me. I head to the top and begin a series of puzzles. The first has me seeking a wandering arch. Everything in this room changes places if I'm not looking at it. This one is pretty easy to figure out. I just have to make sure I'm facing the arch the entire time so it doesn't move, and then I can drop down to the next floor. This next puzzle teaches me about observing a quantum object. That observing an image of an object is the same thing as observing one. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to get to this arch. I can't keep it in my view the entire time because I have to go up a set of stairs between walls that block my vision. Every time I make my way to where the arch was, it has moved. I try to trick it by looking away and then looking back, but it doesn't work. I spend the rest of this time loop in this room, not able to figure it out. It felt like a long time, but it actually ended up being about 6 minutes. I know that I'm onto something important, so I go straight back to this tower. Rather than go under the water and come up, I try flying in from above, which also works. During this flight over, I had an idea. I'll use my scout launcher. The scouts that launch can take pictures. The clue said that observing a picture is the same as observing the object, so if I take a picture of the arch and leave that image up, the arch should stay in place while I go up the stairs and back around. I try it immediately and it works. I felt like a genius. I used this newfound knowledge to also get through the next puzzle, which involved using my scout to take a picture of an arch, then looking around the room until the purple gravity crystal found its way onto the same wall. I could then walk up the wall and down through the arch. It was important to keep that crystal in my view the entire time up the wall, otherwise it would move. That left one last room, which had me using the scouts to strategically observe gravity crystals along the wall and force them to move where I needed them to be next. This one was a lot of fun to figure out. With that, I get to the final floor and am congratulated with learning the first rule of quantum theory. Even though this wasn't the first one I learned, I feel like it was the most important. I get the itch to go back to Brittle Hollow and figure out how to get to the Tower of Quantum Knowledge, because I feel like there is something there I really need. My timing couldn't have been more perfect, because right as I get there, the tower breaks away from the planet and falls into the black hole below. In the moment, I was confused. This is the first time I had realized that parts of the planet were breaking away and falling into the black hole. I spent a lot of time flying around the new debris before I realized something. Now that I'm in zero gravity, it doesn't matter that the path up the tower was broken. I can just fly into it. I finally find the tower right as the music starts, signifying the end of this time loop. I get lost trying to find my way in, but I do manage to do it. Unfortunately, it was right when the sun supernovaed. I learned a few things here. First, this is how I'm supposed to access this tower. Second, it happens near the end of a time loop. And finally, the quantum shard for this planet is attached to the debris of this tower. So when I come back here, I can use my signal scope to find the frequency and locate it more quickly. I have time to kill, so I go back to Ember Twin and play around with the gravity cannon. All previous times I had come to this spot, it was too late in the cycle and it was already full of sand. I mess around with the controls and recall a shuttle. This one is different than the one I had recalled to Brittle Hollow. It has ice on it, kind of like the one frozen on the Interloper. When I get inside, there are messages that talk about a journey below the surface of the comet. What jumps out at me is that they were able to locate a fissure in the ice on the comet's sunward side. For fun, I go to the controls of the ship and set it to launch, only for it to immediately crash into a wall and kill me. This time I set my coordinates for the Interloper. I want to find this fissure. I land on the comet and wait, trying to see if a crack develops. After a little bit of time and us getting closer to the sun, I start to hear the sound of ice melting and see the ground below opening up. I slide down several tunnels, avoiding the ones with ghost matter. I eventually make it to the center and find a flowering green crystal. I read the message left behind by previous explorers and find out this is where ghost matter came from, and that the explorers got trapped here while their ship froze to the comet on the surface. There isn't anything else for me to find here. I float around trying to find an exit, but I'm surrounded by ghost matter. I attempt to fly through one of the holes in the hopes that if I'm moving fast enough, I can get through that ghost matter. But it doesn't work and I die. I'm not quite sure what to do next, so I waste some time running around on Ember Twin and learn nothing new. I eventually take my ship over to Brittle Hollow and decide to just stand at the bottom of the Tower of Quantum Knowledge and wait for it to fall into the black hole, which it eventually does. I immediately pull out my signal scope to locate the tower shard. I go below and fly into the tower with enough time to see and read everything there is. I learned that the journey to the Quantum Moon was an honor to the members of the clan who came before. I also read that what was learned on Giant's Deep was critical to landing on the moon, that the moon will take me to a 6th secret location, and that in order to reach that location, the shrine must be on the moon's north pole. And with this new discovery, the universe ends again. It was this moment that everything clicked for me. In order to land on the Quantum Moon, I needed to have a picture of it so that it doesn't disappear when I get close. I take off from Timber Hearth and am immediately greeted by the moon orbiting the twin planets. As I get close, I bring out my scout launcher and get a good picture and then slowly approach. To my amazement, it worked. I land on the moon, which has taken on a similar look to the Ember and Ash twin planets it is currently orbiting. I land on the South Pole, confirming the information I had received earlier. I try to find a path to the North Pole, but I'm blocked off by these red cliffs. A tower appears next to my ship, so I go inside and turn on the power. There is a mural on the wall reminding me of 3 key details: the rule of quantum imaging, the rule of the 6th location, and the rule of quantum entanglement. I close the door to the tower and decide to test something. I turn down the power so it is pitch black. As soon as I do, I hear a noise. Turning the power back on, the mural now shows the moon is orbiting Dark Bramble. I walk around the moon, which now resembles Dark Bramble, but I am not able to make it to the North Pole. The tower appears again and I get inside to try moving it. This time it takes me to the symbol for the Eye of the Universe. I open the door to find it blocked by a quantum rock. I teleport again, this time to orbit Brittle Hollow. I take a quick trip outside, but again am blocked from getting to the North Pole, so I go back into the tower and try again. Now I'm orbiting Giant's Deep, but cannot go further north because of the cyclone. Back to the tower, now I'm at Brittle Hollow again. I go outside and to my surprise I can now get to the North Pole. There's no tower there, so I do a cool spin move and voila, there it is. My heart is racing as I go inside. I turn the lights off a couple of times until the moon marker shows it is orbiting the eye, and I open the door. This is it. I'm here. I'm at the Eye of the Universe. I keep walking along the only trail available and find an ancient Nomai, still alive and in front of me. I try to interact with him, but he doesn't seem to understand me. He waves his magic staff and projection stones are revealed on the wall next to him. I pick one up and he then summons a couple of pedestals to place the stones on. This is the way I communicate with him. If I pair 2 of the stones together, he can then project a response on the wall for me to translate. Of course, after my first translation, the music kicks in to tell me I'm about to die. I translate as much as I can before my screen goes black. I locate the moon and immediately go back to it. In my excitement, I take a picture and with too much velocity, fly right into it. I bounce off and am in an uncontrollable spin. I unbuckle to repair my ship, only to find there is no ship. All that's left is the hull and I'm floating in space. Rather than salvage this life, I see Hollow's lantern and take the easy way out. Let's try that again. Fly to moon, take picture, land. This time I managed to get to the North Pole very quickly. I go through every combination of projection stone and learn more about the Nomai and the Eye. Once I'm done, I look up and decide to fly into the air being funneled upwards. It's a portal back to the moon that appears to be orbiting Timber Hearth, judging by the look of it. Not really sure where to go now, I use the tower to get to Dark Bramble. I don't know where my ship is, so I try using my jetpack to get into space since gravity is low. I see Dark Bramble and decide I want to try and navigate it without the use of my ship, since the planet has no gravity inside and I may be able to sneak past the anglerfish easier. As it turns out, there is some gravity outside, so on my approach I get pulled into the center and hit a little too hard, causing my death. Part of me thought that would have been the end of the game. Landing on the quantum moon, traveling to the 6th location, and meeting a Nomai seemed like a pretty big deal to me. I go back to my ship log to see what kind of entries still need to be completed. I still have not yet explored Dark Bramble. I've not located Feldspar, Escape Pod 3, or the vessel that are all tied to this location. I've been avoiding the planet, mostly out of fear. I fly out to it and go inside, and almost immediately get eaten by an anglerfish while trying to use my signal scope to locate the distress beacon. My next attempt, I go specifically towards the red light and try to stick to the sidewalls. I find another large opening similar to the core from the outside. There are lots of lights in this one, so I send a probe in and see a bunch of anglerfish right at the entrance. I go inside and immediately get targeted by them. I back out the way I came, which thankfully resets them. I'm able to stick to the wall and locate the next core from the red light, and I go in. Right into the mouth of an anglerfish. I'm clearly doing something wrong, so I put a pause on Dark Bramble again. My ship log showed I still had more to learn at the Sunless City on Ember Twin, so I go back there, far away from the anglerfish. I run around there and find nothing new. I go back out to the Whitehole Station to see if there is any debris from Brittle Hollow worth looking at. I find the gravity cannon floating around, so I recall a shuttle and see if launching something from here does anything for me. It doesn't. Convinced I'm missing something at Ember Twin, I go back to the Sunless City. I find a room at the top that I realize I have not yet found a way into with scrolls that I have not yet read. The way in is blocked by spiked plants. I can launch my scout in, but see no other entrance. I go to the floor above to see if there's anything there, but all I see are sand falling from above. I can see I'm running out of time as the Sunless City continues to fill with sand. Rather than wait for my slow death, I throw myself into the spiked plants and let them take me. I'm committed at this point. Back at Ember Twin and the Sunless City, I start reading some of the writing on the wall I had seen previously. A lot of references to the Sun Station and the Twin Ash Project, two places I have not been, but clearly I need to get to. I go back to the room I couldn't get into before and launch a scout to get a look around from inside. I see the sand falling from the ceiling, and when I look up, there's a hole there where it's coming in from. I make for the floor above to test a theory. I step into one of the sandfalls and go through the hole back down to the floor right below onto some spiked plants. Not where I wanted to land, but at least confirms that I can fit through these holes the sand is falling through. I reposition my scout in the room so that I have a marker on which hole to fall into. I go back up and am able to locate the spot to fall through. I grab the scroll and start reading. The writing discusses the sun station. I learned that you can't get there by shuttle as there is no landing pad, but that they figured out an easy way to return to the Ash Twin regularly. I finish reading right as my oxygen runs out. I knew what I needed to do was somewhere on the Ash Twin. I spent a lot of time here checking out the towers and waiting for the sand to deplete so I could get inside some of them. I found one that had the shape of a sun when looking at it from above that I had not yet completely explored. I went in the door from the back and reread the writing, which referenced the sun station. I think this is where I'm supposed to be. I look for a way to the floor above and see one of the gravity beams behind a lot of spiked plants. The only way to get there is through the hallway that is littered with the same deadly plants. I get the idea that I may be able to fly through the corridor if I take it slow and avoid them. I've been training the whole game for this, right? Wrong. I get about halfway through and die a very painful death. I know I need to try to get through that tower again, but I need to wait until the sand clears. I choose to go back to the orbital probe launcher near Giant's Deep to clear its entry in my ship log. Inside, I find the launch module, which has had its tunnel collapsed in. I peer through the hole and see the glass cracked from the other side. I exit into open space and fly to that side and through the broken window. I find a couple projection stones inside to read their messages. I put one in the pedestal and see a vision from inside the missing probe tracking module that fell below the current of Giant's Deep. Looking around, I recognize this place. This is inside the core of Giant's Deep, the one I couldn't get into because of the electrical field. I immediately get back into my ship and head down to Giant's Deep, and let the counterclockwise cyclone send me below the surface. There has to be a way inside this thing so I can get to the probe tracking module. I spend a lot of time staring at this thing. I can't find an opening that isn't going to electrocute me. The only thing that seems to be able to go in and out are these red jellyfish. I try to boost myself straight down to see if I'm going fast enough I can force my way through, but it doesn't work. What it does do is fry my ship, and in the middle of me trying to repair it, it blows up and kills me. I turn my attention back to Ash Twin and the tower that resembles a sun. I patiently wait by the back door for the sand to lower. As I go inside, I notice the sand is covering all of the spiked plants. I immediately use the sand as a path through the hallway and make it to the floor above. I wait on the warp pad as the sun and the sun station come into view. I'm transported. I can't believe I'm here. I open the emergency door and see the bridge to the other side is broken. I'm orbiting the sun very close and at great speed, so I'm not sure what will happen if I step out. But I make the jump and safely land on the other side. I read the messages inside and find out this station was created to cause a supernova, to generate enough energy to power the Ash Twin project. However, the sun was coming to a natural end to its life anyways, so this didn't work as planned. While walking around the sun station, I find myself dead again, long before the end of a normal supernova cycle. It turns out the sun station falls into the sun at a certain point. I just happened to go with it this time. With that thread coming to an end, I go back to Giant's Deep. I spend more time down at the core trying to figure out how to get in. When one of the jellyfish comes out, I get the idea to try to fly my ship underneath it, thinking that when it goes back down into the core, it could take me with it and provide protection. But my ship is too big and I get knocked back out from under it. I then try to follow a jellyfish into the core immediately after it goes through the surface, but that doesn't work either and my reactor explodes. I go back down and spend a lot of time looking around, knowing I'm missing something. A new idea pops into my head. My ship may have been too big to fit inside a jellyfish, but what if I'm not? I find a jellyfish that is starting its descent, but far enough away to give me some time. I leave my ship and swim underneath, and to my surprise and joy, I am able to go all the way to the top of the jellyfish without taking damage. It serves as a protective shell for me. The jellyfish takes me down into the core, and I immediately see the probe tracking module and swim inside. I read about the orbital probe cannon being used to locate the eye of the universe and to report its location back to the Ash Twin project, but that too much power could cause it to be destroyed. On the other side of the module is a series of models, but the sun's supernovas as I'm reviewing them. Flying to Giant's Deep, through the cyclone, and under a jellyfish, I'm able to get back to the module and finish what I was looking at. The model shows that over 9 million probes have been launched in an attempt to locate the eye of the universe, and one finally found the location. The final model shows me the coordinates for the eye of the universe. I go back to my ship and check the log. I pretty much have only a couple things left to figure out: the Ash Twin project and Dark Bramble. I go back to Dark Bramble first and slowly study it from the outside. I accidentally bounce my ship off part of it, and during my exit into space to repair it, I get pulled into the planet's gravity and die on contact. I head right back and fly inside, focusing again on the red light. I decide to just take it extremely slow. I make it to the next seed and go in. I let my ship float past the 3 anglerfish here. I continue to follow the red light and find the source. It appears to be something similar to fish eggs. I honestly can't figure out what I'm supposed to do here. I end up going through another seed, but just find myself in an endless loop with nothing to scan for new information. I eventually just die to the supernova. I go straight back to Dark Bramble and get to the center again with the fish eggs. I approach another light I see, only to realize it's an anglerfish. I try to backtrack, but I move too much and it eats me. I'm at a loss. I don't know how to find what I need in Dark Bramble. I look at my ship log and see the entry for Black Hole Forge. I poke around Brittle Hollow some more, but can't figure out how to get to the top of the forge. I even try catching a ride on the forge as I send it up, but that does not work. Not sure what to do, I explore Timber Hearth some more and experience the supernova from my ship with a nice view of the trees. Instead of taking off in my ship right away, I go back to the observatory to see if there's anything new there that I might have missed, when a picture catches my eye. I've seen this symbol on every planet. These are warp locations. I actually remember just seeing it somewhere I needed to be. I immediately get over to my ship and take off to fly towards Brittle Hollow. I go down to the Black Hole Forge and look up. That's it. There's a warp point there. I just need to figure out what it's connected to. Back on my ship, I review my log and find the entry for the Ash Twin tower designs and study it. Each tower has a unique design to match the planet it's connected with. I know the warp point on the surface of Brittle Hollow is connected to the Whitehole Station, but what about the tower for Brittle Hollow on the Ash Twin? I locate the tower and go inside, but I can tell the sun in the background is beginning to enter its end of life. I have not been in this tower before. I go to the floor below and read the message, which immediately indicates this is tied to the Black Hole Forge. I go back to the top floor and stand on the warp pad, patiently waiting. After a little bit of time, it happens. I'm warped to the Black Hole Forge. As soon as I step foot in this new area, the music kicks in to tell me the sun is about to explode, but I'm okay with that. I made it. I learned what I can before the end of the universe, essentially finding out that this is where warp cores were being developed. I fly directly to Brittle Hollow to send the Black Hole Forge up to the roof. I take my ship back to the Ash Twin and wait for the sand to reveal the tower I need. I go inside and wait on the warp pad until Brittle Hollow is lined up and I'm back at the Black Hole Forge. I read that an advanced warp core was developed for the Ash Twin project and was installed in the central chamber of the Ash Twin. After finding everything there is to find at the Black Hole Forge, I warp back to the Ash Twin. I feel like I'm pressed for time, so rather than get interrupted doing something new, I reset this time loop by flying into the sun. I review my ship log again to study the Ash Twin Tower designs, as I believe this is how I'm going to get to the Ash Twin project. I fly to the Ash Twin and locate the Twin Tower design and wait for the sand to uncover it further. I see 2 warp platforms. I look up to see the Ember Twin coming into view. I notice it has a warp platform on its surface to the right, so I assume the platform to my right is linked to that. I'm not interested in the surface, so I decide to take the platform on the left. I know the sand will suck me up and onto Ember Twin if I step into it, so I wait until the planet is right above me before I step onto the platform. I'm warped to someplace new to me, but familiar. I've seen this place before during several visions using projection stones. This is the Ash Twin project. There is a lot to read here, and at the end of the platform, I'm able to open and access the core. There is a warning that removing the core will disable the project. I turn off the gravity and fly up to grab the warp core. I now have it in my possession with absolutely no idea what I'm supposed to do with it. I float around aimlessly before I notice the warp platform has lit up again and I can make it back to the surface of the Ash Twin. This warp core is now my companion. The only thing I can think to do is bring it home and see if anyone on Timber Hearth can tell me something new. I take it for a tour around the observatory, which doesn't yield any new information. Back at my ship, I review my log for any entries that might point me in the right direction. I reread the entry for the vessel in Dark Bramble and see reference to the warp core being broken when it crashed while attempting to find the Eye of the Universe. I begin to put 2 and 2 together. I now have a working warp core, and I've also learned the coordinates for the Eye of the Universe. The problem is, I still have not found the vessel. I go to Dark Bramble and head inside, hoping I'll stumble upon a solution. As I get inside, I'm hit with a supernova, and this time I get a message saying, "You are dead," and the credits roll. Not satisfied with that ending, I load right back into the game knowing that removing the warp core does not stop the supernova, but it does end the time loop. I decide to figure out Dark Bramble before I take the warp core again. I have to locate this vessel if I want to get to the end of this game. This time I go in equipped with my distress beacon, since I know one of the escape pods got trapped in Dark Bramble with the vessel. As soon as I go inside the first seed, I find one of the white lights emitting a distress signal beacon, and I point myself in that direction. In this new area, I point myself in the direction of the distress beacon again. This time, there is no light. I float along very slowly so as not to alert any anglerfish. I come around one of the brambles, and to my amazement, I found it. The missing escape pod 3. I exit my ship and fly inside. There is a message that the vessel was giving off multiple signals, and that a rescue team was going to follow the closest signal, leaving a trail of lights in their path to mark their way. I open the nearby escape hatch and see that trail of lights. I get back in my ship and follow. It leads me to the Nomai graveyard. This small seed was giving off a signal from the vessel. It looks oddly similar to the seed found back on Timber Hearth that I launched my scout into. I do the same thing here and see a duplicate signal is created. I follow that signal to another seed, this one having the 3 anglerfish right at the entrance. I let my ship slowly float past them when, for some reason, I decide to launch a new scout in the direction of the signal. That launch triggers the anglerfish and I'm eaten. While feeling stupid for getting myself eaten, I go right back to Dark Bramble. This time I decide to use my signal scope to follow the sound of Feldspar's harmonica. I locate it and send a scout towards it, triggering another anglerfish to eat me. I'm now 2 for 2 on stupid scout usage, resulting in death. Let's run it back. I arrive at Dark Bramble, this time only using my signal scope to find the direction of Feldspar and letting my ship float in that direction. This time it leads me to a seed littered with lights, the last thing I want to see right now. I locate the signal again and point myself in that direction. This time I find a small seed like the one on Timber Hearth and the one at the Nomai graveyard. I send a scout in and see a new signal. This time I find him. I see the anglerfish fossil and some trees. Feldspar is camped out nearby playing his harmonica. I fill him in on everything I've learned. I imagine if I'd found him earlier in my journey, he could have given me some hints as to how to accomplish some of the tasks. He mentions his ship is near a vine that has been hollowed out if I want to check it out. I do just that and travel inside to see where it leads. I find one of the giant steep jellyfish frozen in ice with a journal nearby. The journal says that they taste terrible, but the outside insulates the insides from being zapped by electricity. I'm glad I figured that out all for myself, but this would have saved me some time had I found this earlier. I make my way back to Feldspar right as the universe begins to end once again, but I'm okay with that since I believe I've learned everything I need to in this area. That leaves me with just the vessel to find. I know the drill. Dark Bramble. Escape pod. Follow the lights to the Nomai graveyard. Launch the probe. Follow the new signal. Try not to move near the anglerfish. Accidentally move, get eaten, try again. Dark Bramble. Escape pod. Graveyard. Scout signal. Don't move, don't move, don't move. Fly through the next seed, and there it is. I've finally found the vessel. I cannot believe I am finally here. I go inside and find the broken warp core. I find messages detailing how the vessel crash landed here and is stuck with no power. I've found everything there is to find, and now I know what I need to do. I get to my ship and fly out the way I came, which surprisingly takes me right outside of Dark Bramble altogether. I decide I want a fresh time loop, so I pay the sun a visit. I know everything I need to know now. I start my next loop off on Ash Twin and wait for the Twin Towers to be available. I warp to the Ash Twin project and turn off gravity. I open the access to the warp core and fly up to grab it before warping out. I board my ship and fly to Dark Bramble. I follow the distress signal and see the next seed. I speed up to fly into it, not knowing I was close to an anglerfish. I'm trying to race him to the seed, but I crash and blow up my ship. Fast forward, I did all of that again, except this time I actually make it to the vessel. I install the warp core, which activates the power and gravity in the ship. I enter the coordinates to the Eye of the Universe and launch. There it is. I'm here. This is the 6th location and the Eye of the Universe. I activate the ship's warp and teleport to the surface. I follow the path down, taking it all in. I come across a large crater that I can walk along the walls of. I walk to the top and step over the edge into the darkness. I fall through, not knowing when it will end. And then it does. I'm back at the observatory on Timberhearth, but something is different. It's dark and the exhibits have changed. I go upstairs and see a new map of the universe. I observe it and I'm back floating in space. The stars turn to lights amongst the trees. I walk around as they slowly start to fade, leaving me in total darkness. An unidentified signal appears nearby, so I use my signal scope to locate it. It's me. And then it disappears and there's a tree. I look around but don't see anything. When I look back, the tree has changed. It does it again. I realize this is one of the quantum rules I learned, so I turn my flashlight on and off until a campfire appears. I light it and have a marshmallow. I look around but don't see anything. When I turn back to the campfire, there is now a rocking chair. I look away and turn back to find Esker there, who says he hears music. I use my signal scope to follow the sound and find a banjo inside a structure. I can't find a way in, so I look around the area. I didn't realize that every time I looked away, the building was deteriorating little by little, eventually making an opening for me to grab the instrument. I go back to the campfire to find Rybeck there now, who encourages me to find the others. I follow the signals and get the other instruments. One is on a hammock up in the trees. I find a Nomai mask when a ship appears and I launch it towards a white light. I try to grab the harmonica, but am met with an anglerfish. I approach it more carefully the next time and am able to pick it up. The final instrument is orbiting one of the red lights in the sky, but every time I get close to it, it disappears. The next time, I use my signal scope to zoom in to see if there's something I'm missing, when a button prompt shows up to grab it, so I do. Everyone is now gathered around the campfire. I speak with them all and ask them to start playing their instruments. I enjoy the music for a moment before I ask the Nomai to begin his part. A planet or moon appears in the smoke above the campfire. The music stops. I speak with the Nomai and he tells me we've reached the end of our journey and we can find out what happens next together. I look to this new moon that has developed and jump into it. And that's it. The actual end to the game. I couldn't help but sit back and just think about what I had just accomplished. It was like nothing I have ever played before. I'm saddened that I'll never be able to recreate this experience now that I know how everything works, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to try it and that nothing was spoiled for me even years after the release. Thank you for sticking with me and watching my journey through the Outer Wilds. I'd love to hear about how your own experience went. Where did you get stuck? Were there any moments where something finally clicked? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, please check out my other Outer Wilds video where I show how I earned all the trophies for this wonderful game on my way to the Platinum. Thank you, and please like and subscribe to see more content like this in the future.